Hey everyone, in today's video, we're going to be solving the problem in search interval. So the question says you're given an array of non-overlapping intervals where intervals of I is equal to start I and end I represent the start and end of the ith interval, and intervals is sorted in ascending order by start I. You're also given the new interval equal to start and end that represents the start and end of another interval. Insert new interval into interval such that the intervals is still sorted in ascending order by start and interval still does not have an overlapping intervals. Return intervals after insertion. Okay, so what the question is basically saying is that you're given a new interval over here and you need to input this interval in this sorted list of intervals in such a way that it does not overlap anyone. Right. So in the previous questions, like if you saw my previous videos on intervals, then you already know that questions like these require sorting. But here it's already given in a sorted manner, so we don't have to worry about that now. But you need to keep it checked that you need to insert this in an odor overlapping manner. But over here, if you look at it, that one in 1 3 2 lies between 1 and 3. So this is already overlapping it. So if it is overlapping it, what you need to return is basically 1 5, which is, you can kind of understand that why we're making it 1 5 and returning 6 9 with it. Because after that, it's not going to be overlapping if you make it 1 5. And why is it 1 5? Because 2 lies between 1 and 3, and 3 lies between 2 and 5. So we're taking the most lower bound, which is 1, and the most upper bound, which is 5, and we're making it into an interval. So everything is encapsulated into that interval over here. Okay, so this is what the question is. Just one edge case. I don't know if it's going to be mentioned, if it's mentioned above or not. I think it's not mentioned, but what it is that if you're given something like this, 1 3 and let's say 3 4, this is also an overlapping interval over here, because 3 and 3 cannot be like this. It can't be an end of one, it can't be the end of one interval and the start of another interval. So it is overlapping over here, and if it is overlapping, we need to combine this to make it into a 4. Okay, but that is only if it's a new interval given to us. And already we're given the question that none of the intervals inside this list are going to be overlapping. So we don't have to worry about cases like this. It's only when we are given a new interval, like if we are given a new interval like 1 3, and we're given something like 3 4 in an intervals list, that's when we need to worry, and that's when we need to, combine these two together so that we get a single interval of 1 4. Okay, so this is what the question is, guys. And how are we going to solve this problem? So, firstly, before we solve this problem, there are three cases to this question, right? So, let's just take this example and let me explain it to you. So, let's just take it here, right? If you're given something like this, right, this is the question list of intervals given to you. There are only three ways, there are three cases that's going to happen over here. Firstly, the new interval over here is not going to overlap the current intervals list, right? And when is it not going to overlap? This is the very first case. Okay, so when is it not going to overlap? When it's before this list and when it's after this list. Okay, so we need to keep a check that, let's say we have something like, if we don't have the new interval as 2 5, let's say we have something like -1 and 0. Okay, if this is our interval over here and we need, this is a list of intervals and this is our new interval over here. Okay, if this is the case, then you can kind of just see that we can directly just insert this new interval into the list and return the complete total list like this, and it's not going to be an overlapping interval. We won't get anything overlapping, and this is one case where it's not going to be overlapping and we can just directly return the answer as it is. Okay, but that is only when it is lower than our current intervals, lower bound. Okay, so the new interval's higher bound is lower than the current interval's lower bound. That is when you can directly insert it like this. Okay, now the second case is when it is greater, right? Let's say if you have something like, 10 and 11. In this case, you can also see that it is directly going to get inserted over here, right? Because our lower bound of the new interval, which is 10, is greater than the upper bound of the very last intervals list of very last interval, right? Which means that you can directly insert it over here as well. So it's not going to be overlapping. So these are two cases where it's not going to overlap at all. Okay. Now there's going to be one case, right? Let's say we have something like, there's also one more case when it's not going to be overlapping. And let's say we have something like 4 comma 5, right? If you have something like 4 comma 5 over here, this means that it's not going to overlap it's not going to overlap, right? Because it's 1 3, then we can insert 4 5 in between these two, and then we can just have 6 and 9. This means that it's not going to overlap again. This is the third case where it's not going to be an overlapping case, right? Now, this is also not an overlapping case, but now when does it overlap? There can be two possible cases of it overlapping. Is, let's say we have something like 2 and 5 as given to you. If you have something like 2 and 5, you can kind of see that 2 is going to lie between 1 and 3, and 3 is going to lie between 2 and 5, right? So this is one case where it's going to be overlapping, right? One more case where it's overlapping is if you have something like 3 5, right? If it is 3 5, then the lower bound of this interval is equal to the upper part of this interval is greater equal to the lower part of the new interval, which means again that is overlapping. That means we need to combine these two together to make it a single interval. All right. Now, one more thing you have to keep check is that if you have something like 1 and 10, right? This means that everything inside the intervals list is going to lie in between the new intervals. Okay. So you need to keep a check of that as well. So this is one more case where everything is going to be overlapping completely. Okay. So these are the cases for it overlapping and also non-overlapping. Now, how are we going to solve this problem? Okay. So to solve this problem, let me just show you the code first, and let's do a dry run to understand what we're going to do happen. What's going to happen over here? Let's just take this. Let's zoom out. Let's go here. Okay. So this is the code for the question, guys. Let me just keep it here. Okay. So what's going to happen over here? Firstly, we're going to keep a result array, which is going to output the final answer for us, which is going to be let's say 0 minus 1 to 0, right, in our new intervals. So what we're going to do is firstly we're going to check for the new intervals of I1, which is 1. For our new intervals of 1, which is basically 0, right? If the intervals of I of 0, which is 1, if that is greater, right? If this is greater than this, we can directly just append the new interval into a result over here, which is mine. We can just do minus 1 and 0 like this. We can just directly append it, and then in end, because if the new interval is already getting appended, which means that we don't need to do anything, we just directly append all the remaining values in front of it, right? So we can just take intervals of I to the very last index, and we can just append all of them together. So what we're just basically doing, we're just taking all of this and we're just appending all of them together, and we're just returning the list. And what we're doing is we're just returning the list like this. So this would be the answer for us. Okay, that's what we're doing. This is also happening in the case where, let's say, if you have something like 2 5, yeah. Now let's say 3 4, 3 4, yeah, or 4 5 actually. Let's take 4 5. Right. If we have something like 4 5 over here, so in new intervals, we have something like 4 5 over here. Right. So what we're going to do over here is we're going to check with 1 3 first. Right. When we check with 1 3, we already see that the new intervals of 0, which is 4, is greater than the intervals of I of 1 in this case, which is 3. It's already greater than this, right? So we just move forward. We just go in forward in the loop. When we go forward in the loop, we check with this element. When we check with this element, we see that a new interval of 1, which is 5, new interval of 1, which is 5, and is lesser than the intervals of I of 0, which is 6, right? It is lesser. So what we do is we just append this thing. And in this case, because it was lower than 1 3, 1 3 was lower than 4 5, we're already appending this to the res array like this 1 3. Right. Now when we check with 6 9, we see that 6 is greater than 5. Then we're directly going to append 4 5 to this, and then we just append the elements in front of 4 5, like with all the remaining I till the very last values of the intervals array. We just append all of them together, which is just 6 and 9, and we can just return res in this case, right? So this is what's happening in this case. Now let's take another example where let's just take 2 and 5 now, right? Let's take 2 and 5 now. Now in 2 and 5, what's happening is, let's first check if our new intervals of 1, which is 5, is lesser than intervals of 5 of 0. So no, it is greater. Then we move forward. We check if in new intervals of 0, which is 2, is greater than intervals of I of 1, which is 3. So again, it is not greater, right? 3 is greater than 2 and 5 is greater than 3, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to do the very last thing in this intervals array. We make a new interval, which make the new interval equal to the minimum of these, the two lower bounds, which is 1 and 2, and comma the maximum of the two upper bounds, which is 3 and 5, and we'll just return that. We'll just make that the new interval, which will be 1 comma 5. And when we get 1 comma 5, that will be a new interval now, and we'll just append that new interval like this, right? But one more thing you need to keep in mind is when I'm going to directly append it, right? If we have 1 comma 5 now, right, we need to check for 1 comma 5. When we loop forward, our new interval will be equal to 1 comma 5. It won't be equal to 1 comma 3. When it will be equal to 1 comma 5, we'll loop forward and we'll check with 6 comma 9. Because if we had something like 5 comma 9 over here, right, this means that these two are overlapping, and we would need to go forward and do the same thing we did over here and make this new interval equal to 1 comma 9. Okay, because it would have been overlapping. But since it's not overlapping, we can just keep 1 comma 5 and 6 comma 9, and we can just check over here. If it's not overlapping, in the first case it's not overlapping, we'll just append new interval like 1 comma 5 over here, and 1 comma 5 will be appended like this, and then we'll just append 6 comma 9, the very last elements like this, intervals of I to the very last index of intervals. We'll just append them directly. So this is how we're solving this problem, guys. So let's just run the code. Okay, so what's happening here? Okay, yeah, there was a mistake over here. Let's just make this an empty. Yeah. So yeah, the test cases are running, and let's submit this. Yeah, it's getting submitted, guys. So yeah, guys, that's all for today's video. The time complexity for the code for this problem is O of n, and the space complexity is O of n as well, because we're taking extra space of res. So yeah, guys, that's all for today's video. If you like the video, please do like, share, and subscribe. Do comment down below what kind of videos you want next on the channel. If you also let me know what kind of changes I can do to better explain the videos to you guys. Also, do check out my podcast. And until next time, thanks for watching.